Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3748. Today's date is December 7, 2025. It's been almost like a night at 9:57 p.m. All right, there is a couple of things that I want to talk. Today I went to watch movie named Durandhar. Durandhar is a movie is about a spy thriller kind of like a movie. Okay, a Bollywood movie, and I watched this movie. Okay, now I am trying to giving my opinion regarding about this movie. Is it good? Is it what? Is it what exactly is this thing? Okay, I'm trying to explain from my point of perspective, not a kind of like a movie review, but a kind of like a story behind it and what it kind of like a things, and I don't know. I'm just kind of like giving my opinion. It's not a kind of like a movie review. No, I'm not kind of like doing it that. I'm just giving my opinion, and I'm not really sure what is exactly that opinion. Okay, first of all, is that key. The movie is kind of like telling a story regarding about a real life event. Okay, yeah, that Pakistan politics. Okay, yeah. Now, why do I need to know about this Pakistan politics? Every country has its own politics, and politics are bitterly dirty. Internal politics are bitterly dirty. So, as Pakistan politics are so dirty too, right? Yeah, that is exactly right. So, why does kind of like a Indian Bollywood movie kind of like a made a movie regarding about Pakistan internal politics concept? Why does they do that thing? What exactly it connect with us? Yeah, like basically it's this thing like basically is I am belong to the India. Okay, the movie is actually made in Indian industry, Indian Bollywood industry. So probably the like basically is this thing they should supposed to make a movie regarding about the things that inside a kind of like a domestic or a kind of like a, some sort of international things like that. But you shouldn't supposed to make a movie regarding about other countries kind of like a something personal thing. It's a kind of like a things that na ki let's just say that ki you are trying to kind of like a simply talking about your neighbors inside home what exactly happened and things that it doesn't really concern, right? Yeah, so this is what exactly. So why does kind of like India made a movie regarding about Pakistan politics? Okay, yeah, it's not even kind of like a thing which is associated, right? So at first I kind of like a thought that ki, yeah, why does they do that? It doesn't really concern me that much. Why does it concern us? Yeah, but then I realized that ki no, like basically is this in na, if you have a problem, then problem you might gonna see on the kind of like surface that ki, this is a kind of like problem, but the roots are kind of like a beneath that surface and we don't know that because it's hidden. And that's what kind of like a somebody that we don't know what exactly is this thing. Now what is actually problem? What kind of like a problem that I'm talking about? Terrorist. Pakistan is a country which kind of like a somebody promote or kind of like a somebody supports terrorism. But why? Yeah, why does kind of like a country kind of like a support terrorism? Why does they do that? Okay, the good question. Okay, yeah, is because of that ki Pakistan politics. Okay, yeah. Now if I try to think about Pakistan politics, then I have, should I give some sort of suggestion? Probably it's not kind of like going to give some sort of suggestion regarding about this thing, but still, okay, let me give you the context. Okay, yeah, not every person is a perfect, not every country is a perfect. Everyone are trying to grow and things like that, and growth means kind of like a somebody from bad to good, or probably good to bad, or maybe bad to bad, or worse to bad. I'm not really sure, but from something to somewhere. So let's talk about the Pakistan politics. Why does Pakistan always kind of like a focus on terrorism? Why not they kind of like a kill that thing? Okay, yeah. Pakistan is a kind of like a country. He's kind of like a somebody is this thing that came. Okay, let me tell you. Let me tell you the perspective. Let me tell you the thing. Okay, yeah. should I talk about that particular, like basically is this thing na, ki I think na I shouldn't supposed to talk about this particular stuff. Why? It's basically is this thing na ki probably my opinion from my point of perspective, I am not a credible person to kind of like talk about the kind of like assembly Pakistan politics and why the Pakistan kind of like assembly something kind of like support the terrorist and things and that. It doesn't mean that ki I am not really loving my country or things. No, nothing at all. Or it doesn't mean that ki I have kind of like a hate for other countries, other like a Pakistan country. Not at also. Is this thing? I consider that ki sometimes human kind of like will choose such an option that might kind of like somebody feel right, but in the future, in the long run, it kind of like a wrong. Okay, I'm trying to explain as simple as possible as you can. Okay, so is this thing that ki when the first time when you kind of like somebody use internet, what kind of like a use for that? Like basically first time I kind of like access internet, I access internet for porn because of that ki porn might be a kind of like only one thing that I could get from the internet. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing, when there is a kind of like innovation or invention or growth is actually happened, people are actually utilize that growth for wrong purposes, and that is somewhat something true. Pakistan politics are kind of like a somewhat something like that too. Like the basically is this thing, what kind of like a growth that Pakistan does have? But growth means what? Okay, yeah, money? No, kind of like a something new thing that is called growth. Now, what is that new thing? Weapon. Okay, yeah. Like basically, is this thing that key weapon are kind of like a things are not only available in Pakistan, but it available in abundant, as well as kind of like a something having weapon means like that people might gonna scare you. It kind of like a act as a kind of like a somebody a money that you are holding, kind of like somebody a power that, yeah, you are kind of like holding the power that no one stop you or things like that. Or probably, I don't know, as I mentioned, I am not a kind of like a something a person should supposed to be kind of like a giving some sort of opinion regarding about this stuff. What does Pakistan do in their own country is their matter. I shouldn't supposed to talk about that particular stuff. Okay, yeah, but there is a couple of things that I have to talk about. And what is that thing? Is this thing that ki because of the Pakistan terrorism, it can support the terrorism. India always kind of like a somebody facing a lot of problem. India, like basically, why does Pakistan attack us? Why does Pakistan always kind of like a something attack on Indian territory regarding about Pulwama attack or Mumbai attack? Recently Pahalgam attack. Okay, yeah. Why is this actually happened? Why is this thing? Is because of they only have one reason. Okay, yeah. They want Kashmir. Now Kashmir is a kind of like a state in India. Okay, and Pakistan wants that. But why? Okay, yeah. Why does Pakistan wants that? Well, Pakistan will kind of like there are a couple of advantage Pakistan will get when they have Kashmir. What kind of like advantage that they get? First of all, is that ki Pakistan is a dry state. Like dry state means like that ki usually is this thing, the entire population, entire country is actually run on only one river, and that is a which river? Indus. Okay, Indus river. Okay, Sindhu river. Sindhu river, Indus river. Yeah. So basically, this is the only one river, not only one river. It's a kind of like a main river, which kind of like assembly started from the Himalaya, which kind of like a cross through Kashmir to kind of like a Pakistan to kind of like assembly went into the Arabic Ocean and things like that. Okay, and this is kind of like assembly river. It's somewhat something really essential for life, agriculture, everything. Okay, yeah. Now the initial point is actually started from Himalaya, which means Kashmir. Okay, yeah. Now because of Kashmir is a part of India and Pakistan does not control the kind of like some initial state of that particular river, then Pakistan always have kind of like scared that what if India block this particular river channel, then our entire country will gonna collapse. Okay, yeah. So it's not really good. So for this particular purpose, they kind of like thinks that ki Kashmir, we have to get the Kashmir. Okay, yeah. One reason. Okay. Also, the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right. It's not exactly wrong either. It's kind of like my opinion. Okay, yeah. So do not believe in any kind of like information that I'm saying. If you want a kind of like a simply perfect information, you just have to go to the internet. You will find the exact information. I'm trying to give you as much my opinion would be, and it would be not exactly right. Just my giving opinion. All right. An opinion are subjective, by the way. All right, yeah. So what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that ki first reason is that ki they want Kashmir is because of that ki river access, means like that when they get entire Kashmir state, then probably they will have full control regarding about their Indus river, and India will not gonna kind of like a infiltrate, or India will not gonna do anything at all. Okay, yeah. Basically they will gonna control their river and things like that. So they will gonna kind of like build the dam, kind of like build the agriculture and things and that and stuff like that. One thing. Another thing is that it can kind of like some easy access to China. By the way, they still have kind of like access to China. It's not really that they don't have, but still is this thing having that kind of like access to China, which is kind of like far more essential for them. Why? Because of that, it kind of like a benefit to the China. Because of that, कि China, they if they wanted to kind of like assembly transport any kind of like assembly goods, they have to be kind of like a transport from Arabian Ocean, cross the entire Indian continent, then it went to the kind of like assembly the Andaman Nicobar Island, then it went to the which strait, I'm not really sure that strait, but it's kind of like assembly is this thing that it crossed through Hong Kong and things like that. Okay, so basically is this thing because of it kind of like adds so much amount of time and cost to transport goods from Europe to China. Okay, yeah. And also the Indian kind of like assembly Indian Ocean are controlled by the Indian Coast Guards or things or that. So probably it's not really right for them. By the way, India China also has a kind of like some sort of not good thing too. Okay, yeah. So China wants a kind of like a secondary option that they want their goods, they want their kind of like all those goods and material from other way. And what is that other way? From Pakistan. Okay, yeah. Let's just say that if the kind of like assembly goods and they wanted to kind of like sell some from material, they shouldn't supposed to sell this thing from the Chinese kind of like assembly Chinese territory. They will kind of like sell this thing from Pakistan. Chabar port or kind of like some CPAC or things like that. Okay, yeah. When this thing happened, they will kind of like somebody take the goods, or they will kind of like sell the goods from them, and as also easy access from Pakistan to China. So basically, Pakistan is kind of like enjoying the geopolitical position, geological position in globe and things like that. Okay, yeah. So this is what kind of like Pakistan has a kind of like the same like another reason for the Kashmir and things like that. But probably is this thing the second reason is not really that much valid. Why? Because Pakistan already knew that China is not a country that should supposed to be trust. It's kind of like a things that the only one reason is I think that it's kind of like a very essential them for river. Okay, accessing the full control of the river. That's why they want kind of like a Pakistan. Okay, yeah. Sorry, that's why the Pakistan wants kind of like a Kashmir. Now, why does India will not gonna give the Kashmir? Because Kashmir is an integral part of India. It's part of India. Okay, yeah. Why does kind of like some country will kind of like take some sort of part of the country? No, it's not. Like basically, it actually happened maybe kind of like somebody 100 years ago, but in today's world, we cannot do this thing. We kind of like have international boundaries, and we are respecting boundaries. Not only every country respecting boundaries too. Okay, yeah, we're gonna make sure that kind of like assembly that key boundaries should supposed to be maintained and things. It's very very essential. Like example is this thing that you have a home, and kind of like a neighbor will gonna say, this is the kind of like assembly living room is my area, so move out. Would you, like how do you feel? Obviously you will not gonna feel really good. This is my house, this is my living room, so you fuck off. Okay, yeah. So that's why India is kind of like a protecting our land. Okay, yeah. Now another thing, does India is actually blocking any kind of like some river thing or what? Well, before the Pahalgam, India is not blocking any kind of like a river access. Okay, yeah. But after the Pahalgam attack, India has actually blocked the river access, kind of like a make sure that limited access it will goes. But before that, India was never really kind of like a block any kind of like a somebody river access, nothing really at all. But still after that, Pakistan always kind of like a do lot of kind of like a somebody attack. Okay, Pulwama attack, and the Bombay attack. Okay, then lot of attack, Uri attack. Okay, yeah, these are kind of like attacks are actually happen, which is kind of like somebody just, yeah, Indian government realized that Pakistan will not gonna kind of like understand this language. They have to kind of like teach them by their language, the language that they understand. Okay, yeah. So how does India is actually kind of like assembly doing it that? How does India kind of like assembly facing that particular problem? Okay, yeah. So basically is this thing na ki first is that ki protecting our land area. Okay, yeah. The way that we could supposed to be do like basically make sure our fencing and border are kind of like seal packed and things and that, so that other country means Pakistan will not gonna infiltrate and things like that. Okay, right? And we are doing it that we are gonna make sure that our boundary are kind of like a really good as possible as it can. Okay, but still boundary or international boundary is a very big and people are easily crossed by. Okay, yeah. Like basically the terrorists can easily kind of like come into the India. It's not because of kind of like our boundary is not that much strong. No, boundary is very strong. Okay, yeah. But still the people would kind of like do a lot of kind of like assembly just like jugad and things to kind of like come to the India and things like that. Okay, yeah. Like basically it's that na ki kind of like somebody controlling almost like a millions of people, but after you control the millions of people, couple of people who kind of like somebody just cannot control, because couple of people like one or two people might gonna kind of like escape or things like that. So this is what exactly happened. Okay, yeah. So India understand that ki protecting the boundaries is not the only one option that we should supposed to follow. If we wanted to kind of like simply understand this terrorism, then we have to kind of like face from the bottom, from the beneath, from where it started. Okay, yeah, we should supposed to focus on that. So Indian Intelligence Bureau, okay, yeah, they are not Intelligence Bureau, raw. Okay, raw is a kind of like assembly research and kind of like coordinator wing. I'm not really sure the long form of that. Okay, yeah. So basically is this thing, what does they do? They are kind of like a doing operation. Okay, yeah. Now what kind of like operation does they do? They are kind of like collecting the intel regarding about the kind of like something the terror attack before it actually happened. So how does they do that? How does they are kind of like collecting that intel? First way is that ki sending spy to the other country. Okay, yeah. And it's literally common that kind of like somebody sending some sort of spy to the other country, and they will kind of collecting that intel, and that intel will kind of like somebody send it to the kind of like somebody the authority body in India, and they will kind of like try to take a preventive measures and things like that, right? But this is a kind of like a one way. Okay, yeah. Kind of like a went to the intel, but the intel is kind of like a collecting information from operation from kind of like a simply surrounding level, not internal level. Okay, what I'm trying to tell you is this thing: a spy cannot able to penetrate their politics, their kind of like a mafia network, or nothing really at all. Why? Because a spy cannot able to do this thing. Because if the spy wanted to do this thing, there is a lot of kind of like a problem it gonna came. Like basically why the spy is actually exists is because of that ki he is kind of like simply kind of like invisible. Okay, yeah. He was always been invisible in the society, kind of like collecting the information and things like that. But the information that he was getting is kind of like from the societal point of perspective, not a kind of like simply the inside point of perspective. No. Okay, yeah. Now Indian kind of like assembly, the research bureau and kind of like assembly people who are kind of like doing this all those shit stuff. Okay, they are kind of like assembly create a plan. Okay, yeah. Instead of kind of like a sending some sort of kind of like a spy to the other nation. What if we could kind of like a send such a spy would kind of like a went inside the mafia, inside the inside the kind of like a Pakistan regional politics. Okay, yeah, because terrorism is actually started from there. Okay, yeah. So we just have to kind of like a think from that point of perspective, how this thing actually happened, how they kind of like basically why this like a why like that's why it's kind of like a really much essential for kind of like a somebody went inside the personal stuff, went inside the kind of like their internal politics and things like that. And because of this thing, they found so many stuff. What they found? The weapon. Okay, the way that they manufacturing the weapon. Okay, yeah, the way that they smuggle their kind of like a money, the way that they smuggle the cocaine or things like that. Like, let me tell you one thing, the things that here are very kind of like called as a kind of like assembly a very kind of like assembly very criminal activity, like us weapon smuggling, human trafficking and things like that. And in India it will kind of like take all those preventive measure to not to happen like that. We have kind of like a laws and police are kind of like controlling all those things, but still in India there is some sort of people who are kind of like doing it that, but not in that much level. But in Pakistan it happened in front of everybody and so vividly, and basically their police cannot able to do anything at all because they have kind of like political supports and things and that. Okay, yeah. So because of this thing, they are kind of like assembly, though those people are kind of like assembly encouraged to do kind of like assembly even more crazier stuff, attacking on things and that. God knows what they do. Okay, yeah. Whatever. So basically is this thing that the Indian government decided that we should supposed to be set up a spy inside their internal politics, so that we will kind of like understand how the kind of like things happen, how the kind of like assembly weapon manufacture, how this kind of like assembly all those illegal activities actually happen. And this is what actually started, by the way, this operation called Durandhar. Okay, by the way, I'm not really sure about the operation name is Durandhar or what. Okay, because the kind of like assembly, the contextual point of perspective, the kind of like assembly movies represent that ki yeah, Durandhar is a kind of like a name of this operation, but still this is kind of like assembly very secretive operation, and secretive operation does not really reveal that much early. Okay, and by the way, as a kind of like a director, people who are kind of like doing a creative approach to kind of like mention any kind of like a random name, but still there is some sort of kind of like let's just understand this is operation called Durandhar operation. Okay, a Durandhar operation are kind of like a person who is kind of like a Indian spy went into the kind of like a Pakistan regional politics, okay, internal politics, and try to understand and kind of like giving the intel to the Indian officer, Indian government and things like that. And this is stories about that. Okay, yeah. And they found multiple things. Okay, yeah. By the way, take any kind of like country, regional politics are kind of like assembly much more worse than we think it is, but probably it's not, or probably it is. Okay, let me give you perspective, let me tell you understanding what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, where are you born, where are you from? I am from India. Okay, yeah, I am familiarized from Indian point of perspective. I familiarize that what kind of like a regional politics actually happened, what kind of like a politics happened, what kind of like a fucked up thing happened. Example is this thing that in India kind of like you will not gonna kind of like people feel civilized. Okay, yeah, let's just say, let me give you the understanding. Let me wear this first. It's kind of like a very cold in here. Okay, yeah. So let me tell you the perspective. If you are kind of like from the US or Europe, okay, yeah, what do you think about India? Obviously uncivilized, dirty, pollution, things like that. Why do you think like that? Like basically dirt, pollution is not actually exist in your country? No, it's actually exist in their country too. But why you are kind of like a thing that India has that kind of like a stuff? Because the way that India is kind of like a marketing through kind of like a world media and things like that. And that is somewhat something true. No, basically is this thing, does it kind of like somebody that can change your perspective? No, it does not change. Like basically it kind of like a stick with you. Let me give you perspective. If you are from US and Europe, you think about India as a kind of like a pollution country, maybe criminal happened, maybe kind of like a somebody the kind of like a somebody smuggling or any kind of like a criminal activity will gonna happen. But in reality, that is not. Okay, yeah, I'm living in India and I haven't really seen that much stuff. But still, is my perspective is Indian point of perspective? No, because I live in kind of like only one part of India where is called Maharashtra. But there is a kind of like only Bihar or UP. There are kind of like things happen. Okay, yeah, in not much kind of like somebody a very big, but it actually happened over there too. Okay, yeah. So I am completely agree that yes, India is a kind of like a pollution country. Yes, people are kind of like uncivilized. Yes, people are kind of like actually really not that good. Okay, yeah. And I'm completely understand about your point of perspective too, and that is somewhat something true. And that is not kind of like something that ki India is kind of like this country and that country. No, I am not blaming anyone at all. I am blaming the human point of perspective. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing, that ki when we born or when we kind of like live in this particular environment, we are kind of like a bit really comfortable in this thing, in that particular environment. And regarding about that environment shows us, we kind of like create some sort of thing, what is actually right and what is actually wrong. Example is this thing, I born in India, so basically for me, what is actually wrong thing? Killing people, obviously wrong thing. Smuggling weapons or things, wrong thing. Kind of like assembly the human trafficking, wrong thing. Kind of like a smuggling cocaine, wrong thing. Okay, yeah, because this is kind of like a society kind of like a telling me this is actually wrong thing, and yeah, that is actually wrong thing too. Okay, yeah. But if I born in Pakistan, let's just say if I born in Karachi, in this kind of like a particular area called that particular place, okay, yeah, where it all this actually happened, where smuggling and kind of like a trafficking and kind of like a some weapon smuggling, all those things are very common, then was it what is actually my opinion? My opinion would be kind of like a say that it's not bad at all. It is bad, but it is not that bad at all. Why I'm kind of like giving that particular opinion is because of this thing that my father is actually working in gun factory, and he is actually kind of like making enough money so that I would kind of like eating 2 times of meal. So I would consider that that is good, right? That is good. So this is what it is. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing, where you born and where you kind of like a surrounding, you kind of like a narrate, you kind of like a simply create a definition regarding about what is actually right and what is actually wrong. Okay, yeah. And this is what kind of like a simply stuff that I'm trying to tell you. Okay, yeah. It is this thing, it is that ki the stuff that I'm thinking that it is kind of like completely right, but people who are actually from that particular place, they might consider that no, this is not right, this is a like this kind of like a common. Yeah. And this is what it is. Okay, yeah. Now this is what something kind of like somebody their regional politics are like that too. They are kind of like a dirty, they are kind of like killing and stuff and that and that. But why does India kind of like do this thing? Why does kind of like they plant their kind of like some super spy into the kind of like some regional politics? Because of intel, because of kind of like some what kind of like information that they are getting, and they were kind of like a preventive measures regarding about the future attacks and things like that. That's why kind of like things. And this is what kind of like a Durandhar movie actually tell us. Okay, and by the way, Durandhar movie is kind of like a telling a story, real life event. Okay, all the people who are kind of like mentioned in this movie are real person. The protagonist of the movie is somewhat something kind of like a considered as a little bit fictionalized. Okay, yeah, because of the kind of like somebody that Indian government does not really kind of like mention that it is kind of like a right or wrong, because obviously those are operation or security operation. Okay, and they will not gonna tell us to the kind of like a filmmaker, oh, this is what this is that they will not gonna tell us. So that's why the protagonists are kind of like somebody take a kind of like somebody creative approach regarding about their name and things like that. Okay, yeah. But still the villains are kind of like mentioned in the movie are exactly true. Okay, yeah. Entire the kind of like somebody the internal politics in the Pakistan, they mention it very properly, and which is exactly true, by the way. Okay, yeah. Now what is actually my opinion? What is actually is this thing? What is actually after I watch this movie, what do I feel? Do you think that Pakistan is a enemy country of India? I did not think that way. Okay, yeah. Let me give you perspective. Okay, yeah. Enemy is a very kind of like a word that probably not. Okay, yeah. Yes, I do feel hurtful when kind of like a Pulwama attack happened, multiples of kind of like a soldier actually die. Okay, not soldier, people actually die. Okay, sorry, Pulwama. Okay, yeah, Pulwama attack, soldier die because it hit the convoy. Pahalgam attack is actually attack on kind of like a people. Okay, yeah. Bombay attack is actually happened to the kind of like citizen of the India and things like that. So yes, I do feel really angry. I do feel that ki those terrorists should supposed to be punished and things like that. But does it actually solve the problem? No, it's not. So what should I supposed to do? So basically I am actually kind of like something accept this thing that ki the raw agent kind of like the way that they are kind of like a sacrifice for their country, sacrifice for our country is really good. Okay, yeah. But probably is this thing na ki it doesn't make me a kind of like a things that ki I should supposed to be kind of like a create opinion regarding about the Pakistan is a kind of like enemy country. I would not gonna create such a kind of like a statement regarding about that, because let me tell you one thing na, is not a fault of country. Okay, yeah. And it's kind of like so many people who are kind of like controlling them, and they are kind of like somebody giving the perspective regarding about how the world they should supposed to be look at. Example is this thing, India is a democracy country and we have kind of like a lot of kind of like assembly, we can do any kind of like opinion regarding about anybody. Okay, yeah, because India is a democracy country. Now Pakistan is also a democracy country too, but still it kind of like dictated by the army and things like that. Okay, yeah. And basically is this thing that Pakistan is actually a kind of like exist, sorry, Pakistan government is kind of like something exist, is kind of like doing the criticism or kind of like attacking to the Indian government, things like that. That's why they are kind of like earning money and things like that. Okay, yeah. So what I'm trying to tell you, if you could control, if you kind of like change their politics or change their internal system or things or that, that people might be really good. Like basically is this thing na ki a kind of like a government responsibility or government took the action regarding about some certain thing, other people kind of like taking opinion regarding about that ki Pakistan is a wrong country or this country is a wrong country or maybe this and that. It is not. Okay, probably it's a kind of like a personal opinion might be, but I don't really consider myself as a kind of like somebody that ki Pakistan is a country that I should supposed to be my enemy country or my kind of like a villain or things like that. No, definitely not. Like you have to kind of like a change little bit of thought process. Okay, let me tell you reality. Sorry, yeah. Let me pair this first. Okay, yeah. Okay, in your day-to-day life, what you want to achieve? In your day-to-day life, what you want to achieve? You wanted to achieve some certain thing in your life, a kind of like a goals that you have, a kind of like a money that you want or things that, right? Because it's what kind of like somewhat something really essential. When we try to live our life, we need some certain thing, and that some certain thing will not gonna came from hating other countries or things like that. Okay, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Okay, yeah. So basically is this thing na ki probably is this thing the people who are kind of like a hating other country is because of they are earning money from that point of perspective. Okay, let me if you not really understand, let me give you another. Okay, if I'm gonna say that ki you gonna make this samosa and I will gonna give you, I'm gonna pay you kind of like a some sort of amount of money. Let's just say you gave me one samosa, I will give you 20 rupees. You gave me 2 samosa, 40 rupees, 5 samosa, 100 rupees, right? So you are actually earning money by selling a samosa, right? Okay, selling a samosa or selling any kind of like a food. Okay, yeah. What if I'm gonna say that ki you have to kind of like simply sell a narrative regarding about India is actually wrong country or things and that, and I have to I'm gonna give you some sort of amount of money. So what should you supposed to sell? You're gonna sell a kind of like a narrative regarding about India is actually wrong country by multiple ways of possibility. Like basically tell us that India is actually wrong, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. You are selling this narrative to the rest of the people, to the rest of the world and things like that, and I will gonna pay you. So do you understand this point? Basically is this thing, every person are wanted to earn money whatever the way they should supposed to be do. Now basically is this thing, educated people try to understand that ki what is actually wrong thing, what is the right thing. A wrong thing they understand, no, this is actually wrong thing, we should supposed to be earn money by the things that it matter. Let's just say I should supposed to learn something that kind of like a boost my career and things like that. But this actually happened because of I am kind of like educated. But if I'm not educated person, then probably the chances to kind of like earn money from right way are eliminated. Okay, yeah, because I'm not really educated person. So what kind of like a way that I should supposed to be earn money? A bad way. And what are the bad way? These are the bad way: smuggling, extortion, these and that and that. Yeah. So probably what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that key I shouldn't supposed to blame any kind of a country that what is actually wrong country and this and that. I think that na, it's my opinion. Okay, yeah, I'm not really sure. But the education is the only solution to solve all the problem in the world. All the problem regarding about terrorism, regarding about the poverty, regarding about money, regarding about everything is gonna solve by the education. The way that we are kind of like a teaching to the people, we are the way that we are kind of like a, and basically this thing ki, do not kind of like expect good thing happen from today. No, like basically this thing, if I'm gonna say that ki, I'm gonna make sure my people should supposed to be educated means what? A for apple, B for ball? No, that is not the education, dude. That is not the education. Education means what? Telling them what is actually right thing and what is actually wrong thing. Try to kind of like understand them ki what is actually the right thing and wrong thing, and that is called as education. Try to tell them that ki what is actually right thing, that you should supposed to be earn money and things and that, because this is the way that you're supposed to be living the life. Okay, yeah, like everyone doesn't really wants to be kind of like a take the gun and kind of like a somebody kill anybody and things like that. No one wants to be that, but still people are doing it is because of some sort of reason, and that reason is a lack of education most of the cases. So I think that na ki education is the only thing that solve every problem in the future, not today. Okay, yeah, education will not gonna solve the problem today. Education will gonna solve the problem in the future, for tomorrow. And I think that is, if I kind of like give them proper education regarding about building the life and things and that, and not just go to Pakistan as well as India. Like India is also a fuck all country too. Like basically we don't really get that much kind of like a really good education. And this is what something is this thing. Whatever, it's just my opinion. It's not really kind of like a things that it's gonna change and stuff like that. Whatever. But this is just my opinion, by the way, regarding about Durandhar movie. Movie is really good. I love the acting. The way that acting portrayed by the Akshay Khanna, oh my god, the way that the character portrayal by Akshay Khanna was like really amazing. He has very less dialogue in the entire movie, but the way that he expressed himself in front of the frame, in front of the camera, by god, it just felt like that. Wow. Same thing goes to the Ranveer Singh. He portrayed a really good character, but I'm kudos to the kind of like somebody his makeup, the way that he kind of like a portray on the frame. His kind of like somebody hair, like really good, really heavy. It felt like that ki a badass person and things like that. Costume really good. Okay, yeah, really great. It kind of like a match with the kind of like some background and things like that. Also kind of like gives them, he is a kind of like a protagonist, and way that he portrayed himself, larger than life picture, by god, really great. By the way, every character, the way that they portrayed their acting was like really amazing and really great. In the acting point of perspective, like Akshay Khanna and Ranveer Singh, they just pull off so incredibly. I just like, wow, I really love it. Another thing I love it, music. I love the music. Like basically this is the second movie of Aditya Dhar. Aditya Dhar is a kind of like somebody, the director of the movie. The first movie was the Yuri. Okay, I watched this movie. Yuri was really incredible. But in the Yuri, the music was kind of like a really mellow. Okay, yeah. But in this particular movie, the music is kind of like a really punchy, really like EDM, kind of like a tick 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 tick. Okay, like by the way, the movie was almost like a three and a half an hour long, but still the music, the way that they use in kind of like a particular context, it just blend with so much well that it felt like wow. And it kind of like somebody add emotions and depth, and kind of like somebody just something is kind of like a coming, okay, yeah, and something is kind of like a bigger, larger and things like that. Music was like, oh my god. First of all, acting that I love. Another thing is that the music, I really love the music. Okay, yeah. And direction, okay, yeah, direction is also really good. Art designing, really great. Okay, yeah. By the way, I haven't really seen the Karachi. I haven't really seen the Karachi that much, but the way that the Karachi kind of like represent the art designing, the alley, the way that the costume and the way that kind of like some entire environment looks very realistic. Some certain point there is a kind of like a visual effects are lacking behind it, like when there is a kind of like a scene where a kind of like a that particular protagonist who kind of like kill this particular man by the cylinder, that particular fire is kind of like a look little bit of kind of like a some control fire. Okay, what's the control fire? Yeah, it's a real fire, but kind of like a bit really control way. Okay, yeah. Control way means what? Like basically is this thing na ki like a blast the fire little bit and kind of like a show them impact that it's kind of like a very big and huge impact. But yeah, I didn't like the fire that much. Okay, yeah, there is a kind of like a visual, that's why they didn't really put that much effort to kind of like a visual. They wanted to kind of like make sure that realistic approach to kind of like do the action and things like that. And dude, the action that they represent in the movie was like complete realistic. It's like wow. Okay, yeah, the way that the brutalities actually happened, I was like, there is a scene, okay, yeah, like where is goosebumps him. Okay, yeah. By the way, there is a kind of like somebody, the Arjun Rampal character pull off the kind of like somebody, the facial things actually happened through the that Indian spy is actually caught, and the way that he do this thing, oh my god, it's very brutal. Okay, yeah, very brutal. Okay, yeah. Yeah, this is a movie that I like. Okay, yeah, there are kind of like things. Is it worth it? Like basically it's this thing that I kind of like only went to the theater after so long period of time. Like basically last time I went to the theater, Avatar, okay, The Way of Water. Okay, then after that I never really went to the theater because I don't really consider that going to the theater, like I don't really kind of like found any kind of like a movie that kind of like somebody feels that casual supposed to spend some sort of amount of money. But Durandhar is a kind of like a movie that I was like I was not really waiting for that. I was nothing really at all. Okay, I was just kind of like somebody just kind of like scrolling through, and suddenly there is a pop-up prizes that ki Durandhar movie review, and way that they kind of like somebody talk about the movie was really really great. Then I watched the bunch of kind of like a movie reviewer, and they also kind of like mentioned that Durandhar movie was really great and things and that and that. By the way, is this thing that ki I don't want to kind of like watch this movie, but like problem is that like base problem is that I went to the Book My Show. Book My Show is a kind of like assembly application where you kind of like book the movie theater and things like that for your seat and things like that. And luckily I get very low prices. Okay, yeah, like usually the ticket prices are almost like a 200 and 300 rupees, but I get the one ticket for almost like a 150 rupees, which is kind of like a something very less price for me, and just like 150 rupees, yeah, it kind of like worth it. Like basically if the price is too much, let's just say kind of like a 200 or 250, then I might gonna think that no, I shouldn't supposed to go there. But 150 rupees, I just say yeah, like let's go 150 rupees, yeah, why not? So I spent 150 rupees and I went to watch the movie. Okay, yeah, it's good, it's great. But is it really worth it to spend 150 rupees? Yeah, for me actually. Okay, yeah, but it's good, it's great. Like basically I'm not blaming, I'm not kind of consider that kids kind of like somebody just, but still is this thing na ki I don't like that much violence that much. I like the violence, it's not really that ki violence I didn't like. I like it, but the way that a presentation, like I don't know, like basically is like, let me tell you one thing now. Okay, let me tell you the perspective. This is thing that ki I love the action when have a kind of like scientific backing behind it. Okay, yeah, the way that person attacks and the way that person fell down and what kind of like gravity impact. Like basically is this thing na ki every Indian typical movie protagonist always kind of like somebody portray as a kind of like a larger than life and things, and he has very powerful and things like that. And in this particular movie, same thing. Like the actor, the protagonist, the way that he kind of like walk, the way that he kind of like showcase, like it kind of like it doesn't really show that much his vulnerable part and things like that. Because in reality, people are very vulnerable regarding about everything. Okay, yeah, and like I like the kind of like a simply action movie, but when it kind of like a represent through scientific point of perspective, then that is kind of like a feel really good. Okay, yeah, feel the kind of like a things that wow. Okay, yeah, let's take a kind of like a simply simple that thing ki Fast and Furious. In the Fast and Furious, people actually fly, people actually fall down from kind of like a plane to kind of like a mountain by kind of like a cars, which kind of like a feels really kind of like amazing, great. It felt like wow, okay, yeah, and kind of like a realistic point of perspective, yeah, that this could be actually happen. That if you kind of like a fall a car from almost like 1,000 feet, then it would be, yeah, it would kind of like a realistic approach to look at that particular stuff. But the second thing that they did, like in the second part, they kind of like did something very crazy. They kind of like attack the like they kind of like attract the entire car by the super magnet, things like that. It kind of like a feel like frictional, and I don't really kind of really connect with that particular stuff. But the in the first series, in the first I don't know what kind of like a part was that, but they kind of like a fall from the sky. It felt kind of like a with the practical point of perspective. I like that kind of like action, that kind of like a resonate with the kind of like a scientific point of perspective, and it felt kind of like somewhat something good narrate. Okay, yeah, I like that thing. Okay, yeah, but still is this thing that keep possible, like what I'm trying to tell you is this, every movie actor, sorry, every movie director has a kind of like a very sense of thought process regarding about the way that he portrays the action. SS Rajamouli kind of like a portray action larger than life. Okay, yeah, it has like when it kind of action happened, unbelievable action happened. Like you cannot able to imagine like a RRR movie. In this RRR movie, the two men who are actually fighting, there is the one man who is kind of like a sitting on another man, and they both are fighting. Like the way that the fight was like completely unscientific point of perspective, but I enjoy. Because I laugh, okay, yeah, but I enjoy because it's so out of the box that I just can't even imagine. It was like I like it was like a basically scientifically it unrealistic, but it felt good, and I'm really enjoy. And the way that kind of like somebody the way that kind of like somebody the Ram kind of like a portray by the kind of like a S Charan the in the last fight, it shows that yeah, this is kind of like a really good, like really badass action and things like that. It felt really good too, and by the way, it's kind of like a feel really good. But Durandhar movie, the action is really intensive, but it's not a kind of like action that I kind of like memorize. Like basically the way that the planning and kind of like a politics actually happen, and the way that the acting was really good, but the action is not the kind of like a part that I kind of like memorize. It's really good, by the way, it's very brutal, but it's not, yeah, it doesn't really have that kind of like a fact that it says wow factor. No, it doesn't really have that, but the movie is really good, acting like wow, top notch. Okay, it's been almost like a 48 minute. I'm kind of like somebody talking about a lot of stuff. Okay, so this is just my review regarding about the Durandhar Bollywood movie. Okay, released in 2025, by the way. And the next part is also kind of like a release in after 6 months. Okay, yeah, in March 2026. Okay, yeah, whatever. All right, this is it, and thank you.